Liverpool have sacked Arne Slot. He leaves the club just a year after winning the Premier League title, but after a difficult season where they failed to mount any sort of defence of their crown despite major investment in the playing side. He departs with immediate effect, and the process to appoint a successor is already underway. In a joint statement, Liverpool's ownership underlined its appreciation for the success Arne brought to the club and also the leadership displayed in his 2 years in charge. This is what they've said. That this was a difficult decision for us to make as a club. It goes without saying. The contribution Arne has made to Liverpool Football Club in the time that he has been with us has been significant, meaningful, and most importantly, to our supporters and ourselves, successful. As such, our appreciation for everything he has achieved could not be greater, particularly as it was underpinned by a work ethic, a diligence and a level of expertise which further underlined our view that he is a leader in his field. From the moment that we first encountered Arne, it was immediately clear that he is an individual who does not merely accept responsibility, he embraces it. This was evident when he agreed to take over as head coach, when he guided us to the Premier League title, and throughout the season just ended when he faced considerable challenges and burdens. At the same time, we have collectively come to the conclusion that change is necessary in order for the club to keep moving forward. Again, it must be stressed that this is not a decision which has been reached lightly, anything but. A great deal about him as a person. As such, we can only wish Arne well in the next stage of his coaching career, with our expectation being that he will continue to be successful. We do so in the knowledge that his Liverpool legacy is intact and will become yet more meaningful in the years and decades to come. Nevertheless, the conclusion we have come to is built on a belief that the team's trajectory is best addressed through a change of direction. That does not diminish the work Arne has done here or the respect we have for him, nor is it a reflection of his talents. Rather, it is indicative of the need for a different approach. Arne leaves with our gratitude, with a Premier League title to his name, and with the knowledge that he and his family will always be welcome back at Anfield. OK, right, let's cross then and speak to a man who knows all about Liverpool Football Club, and that is Neil Mellor. So, Neil, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us at such short notice. Just how much of a surprise, then, was this news to you?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dave. Wasn't expecting it today. You know, Champions League final day. Looking forward to watching the game later on. And, yeah, it's come as a bit of a surprise, I have to say that. What I would say is a massive thank you to Arne Slot for delivering the Premier League title in his first season. Everybody knew, all Liverpool fans knew, that it was always going to be difficult after Jurgen Klopp leaving, and the success he had. This season was very different. Obviously, the league position wasn't great, and to be honest, didn't look like looking at the league table all season. It's been a struggle for various reasons, various factors, injuries, certainly being one of them. The Diogo tragedy in the summer didn't help either as well. And Liverpool almost sort of limped over the line. Unfortunate, you have to say that fifth place was good enough for a Champions League place. So Liverpool got away with one there. So it was clear to me as well, you know, speaking to the Liverpool fans as the season came to a close, the mood had changed. The mood had changed without a doubt. And one thing you have to do when you're owners, you have to listen to the supporters. You cannot ignore the supporters. And that growing unrest with Arne Slot was growing game by game. So difficult decision for the club to make, but one they felt like they needed to.
Just reflecting on his time, Neil, I mean, the club statement referenced it. The achievement of coming in, and look, he was left a pretty good hand, and that Jurgen Klopp's team was a fantastic team that he inherited. But he adopted a slightly different style of play, and to win with your first season in charge, just how impressive was that season under Slot?
I think it's important not to underestimate just how good an achievement that was. I know there's a lot of people out there who will say, oh, well, it was Jurgen Klopp's team. Jurgen Klopp left an incredibly talented group of players. There's no doubt about that. And a way of thinking before he left. Now, Arne had to come in and he had to convince these players. He had to convince the top players in world football, like Salah, Van Dijk, Trent when he was there, Alisson. I'm the man who can still deliver quality for Liverpool football. If the players didn't rate him, then they would have announced it very quickly, and the performances wouldn't have been there, and Liverpool would not have challenged for the league title. He convinced the players in that first season, very early on, that he was the man to take over from Jurgen, and it was a brilliant season for all Liverpool fans. That was certainly at Anfield, for the Spurs game when the title was confirmed, for the Palace game when the title was lifted. It was an incredible season, but things changed, and it does in football, and for various factors. I think what was quite telling, Dave, was the last game of the season for Liverpool this season against Brentford, and it wasn't a great game. The starting 11 did not have any of the new signings. Liverpool spent a lot of money, invested a lot of money into some new signings. Not one started in that final game of the season. I thought that was quite telling in terms of how the players haven't been available, maybe not at the level expected in the first season, but that has to change next season.
Yeah, and there was a lot of money outlaid on those players that you just mentioned there, Neil, and the contrast with that first season when he hardly brought anyone in. How significant was that, trying to bed those talents in? Obviously, Alexander Isak got injured. There was a bit of a saga with Newcastle. It seemed to drag on and on, so he didn't really hit the ground running, then picked up his injury. Florian Wirtz is a super footballer, but again, didn't really hit the ground running. How difficult was it to suddenly gel 5 or 6 new players, something he didn't have to do in that first season?
Yeah, well, the league table shows you how difficult it was. Look at Liverpool's results this season. There's been far too many games at Anfield where Liverpool have dropped points against teams that they shouldn't be. You know, the 3 promoted teams all coming away from Anfield with something which was disappointing. Obviously, the away form as well. Too many results which were not in keeping of what was expected for the defending champions. I think the expectation increased. I think that's what has to be said. Had this season been Arne's first season, I think that might have been accepted a little bit more. But because of winning the league title in his first season, all of a sudden the expectation increased. A lot of fans will say about the style of play wasn't really that enjoyable to watch. I think in general, the Premier League wasn't great to watch. I mean, Arsenal have deservedly won the Premier League title, but they certainly haven't been a great team to watch this season. Maybe the style of the Premier League has slightly changed. But yeah, new personnel. And you have to remember as well that when Jurgen left and all the great players of that era, it was going to become a time when Salah left. When other players, Robbo's now left, Alisson will eventually leave, Van Dijk, Diaz left, Trent left. All of a sudden, the players who were key to Jurgen's era were going to be starting to leave. And the new players coming in, that transition was going to be difficult to still have those levels to compete for the title. So, yeah, unfortunately for Liverpool, it's been a disappointing season. And now it's going to be a big summer. And maybe it's a lift that a lot of fans wanted. You know, maybe talk of new signings coming in, which felt as though the mood would improve. And whoever is going to be the new manager, I'm sure that will bring a bit of excitement with that.
Yeah, we'll get to to who's coming in just a second, but I just want to go back to the point you made about the style of play, because under Jurgen Klopp, it could be kind of harem-scarum stuff. I think Mo Salah called it kind of heavy metal football, and that identity is so important in modern football, isn't it? I never remember back in the day the identity or the playing style being such a thing, but these days you've not just got to win, you've got to win in playing an attacking brand of football, a high-octane type of football. Did he suffer in comparison to Klopp in that regard?
Yeah, I think the comparisons will always be made. You know, ultimately he took over from Jurgen in that time, and you know, Liverpool fans will always look back to that era under Jurgen. It was incredible. It really was. He took Liverpool to the best team in the world and the most enjoyable team to watch. It was brilliant. But times move, players move on, managers move on. And maybe that was one part where Liverpool knew it would transition. In terms of the style, I mean, how many times this season, and I don't know the answer, but how many times this season has Arne Slot been able to play his best team, his key players? I'm talking Isak, Wirtz, Ekitike, Salah. How often has he been able to play his first choice team with the new player? I'm not sure it's been that often, to be honest. Injuries have played a part. Right back's been a big issue for Liverpool. So in terms of the style, I think he's had to adapt to what players have been available. I think the squad has been thin for Liverpool because of the injuries. You know, not had the strength of squad to be able to come in and replace the players. I mean, Virgil van Dijk at 34 years old this season, he's played 63 games for his club and country. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. And if he would have got injured at any point, I don't think Liverpool would have been in the Champions League places. So a bit fortunate that he wasn't one of the players who has been injured. Style of play, Liverpool would love to see attacking football but winning football. And because the style wasn't that great to watch, the results weren't great, I think that accumulation added to the frustrations.
Yeah, the other player, you mentioned Virgil van Dijk playing a lot of games. A man who probably didn't play as much football as he would have liked and wasn't as instrumental as he has been in recent seasons was Mo Salah. They seem to have one or two run-ins. He's been such a big factor, isn't he, in Liverpool's success. But he's been pretty critical of Slot. What do you make of their relationship and how big a factor?
Salah's had a different right-back for so many games. Has been a problem for him and the team. I think Diaz as well, I thought his work rate was incredible for the team. Darwin Núñez, Diogo Jota as well, I thought their work rate was incredible. And Salah had a good relationship with those players, which helped, again, Mo Salah. Whereas this year he's had to develop a new relationship with whoever's played right back, which has changed so often. Wirtz, a new player, Ekitike, Isak, all these relationships. And you know what, despite his numbers being way down to what expectation is for Mo Salah, you look at the list of players, and I'm sure you could get it up, who has actually had more goal contributions than this season. And all of us who think, well, yes, it's not the expectation we want from Salah, but he still has contributed. And it can't always be Mo Salah. So Salah leaving now this summer will mean Liverpool other players have to step up next season, whoever they are, rather than just relying on Salah. He was massive for Liverpool, winning so many trophies. So, it's a sad loss for the Premier League and Liverpool Salah going.
OK, so the question now is who comes in. Is there anyone you'd like to see, Neil? I mean, probably a bit early for Pep Guardiola, I think. But Andoni Iraola is odds on to take over. Who would you like to see?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't expecting this today. I mean, there'll be loads of names. Iraola's obviously done a brilliant job at Bournemouth. You have to say that he's got a real likeable personality, his identity as a team, despite losing key players. Look at last summer. The players that Bournemouth lost, almost decimated defensively with the players they lost. They lost the best player in January, Semenyo as well. So he's done a great job, no doubt about that. There'll be other names mentioned, the likes of Tuchel, Nagelsmann, who were both at the World Cup. Enrique, the fact he slipped in the other week, he'd sat on the cop and watched Liverpool. Without doubt, he is regarded as one of the top coaches in world football at the moment. Jurgen, there's always mentions about would Jurgen come back one day to Liverpool. So I don't know. There's loads of names in the mix, but Iraola at the moment seems the most obvious. He's obviously left Bournemouth this summer, done a brilliant job there. He knows the Premier League. I think that's important for as a coach as well. But the expectation is completely different at Liverpool to Bournemouth.
Neil, if they'd gone earlier, maybe a month ago, might they have got Xabi Alonso if they missed the boat there? A Liverpool legend returning to manage. It would have been a favourite move for the fans. Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt about it. His representations must have asked the question to Liverpool, is Arne staying or not? There was always the noise that he was going to stay. So I don't know what's changed between those conversations that Xabi Alonso must have had with Liverpool, whether Liverpool decided maybe they weren't interested in Xabi like they were a couple of years ago. When he was available, that was the most obvious name. And if he hadn't have taken Chelsea, then his name would have probably been linked the most. But he's Chelsea's manager, and I'm sure he'll want to sort them out because they've had their own problems over the years. But yeah, that is one name that will sadly not be at Liverpool for the near future.
OK, Neil Mellor, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Cheers, Dave.
Right, from one Neil to another, let's get to Neil Atkinson for more on this. Then from the Anfield Wrap, Neil, a very good afternoon to you. Your reaction then on the news that Arne Slot has been sacked?
I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's sad, and I think it's sad where Arne's found himself over the course of this season. I think a lot of it has been outside of his control. I think he clearly is a good man. And I think you'd struggle to argue against the idea that he's an excellent coach. But it's worth saying that this season, things have got out of hand in terms of what he was able to control. And I think that the football has deteriorated over the course of the campaign, leading to it being really rather mushy by the time that the season finishes. As I say, there's a lot of factors around this which were never in Arne Slot's control. Let's be clear about that. But he's found himself now, I think, in a situation where Liverpool have decided they need to change course. They need to have something that's a little bit different. They need to start a journey again from scratch. And I think they felt that Arne Slot was not the man to lead that journey.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those mitigating reasons for why the performances have dipped this year. I mean, the fan base, though, what you think broadly in favour of this move, the change was needed?
I think that broadly people were in favour of the move. I think that it's worth saying, though, it's unreasonable to have a negative view of Arne Slot. It's perfectly reasonable to not want him to be Liverpool manager. But if you go through what it is that he's had to put up with across the last 12 months, and also remember his achievements of the 12-month previous, it's worth saying, there was a great many pundits at the start of the 24-25 season when they were ranking likely top threes and top fours, didn't even have Liverpool in them. Those pundits were fools, and they were made to look fools by Arne Slot, who took that team, managed it brilliantly, got the very best out of Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk, got improved performances, hugely improved performances out of Ryan Gravenberch and Ibu Konate, Luis Diaz, I'd argue as well, in amongst that category, and got the continuity of performance out of players like Alexis McAllister, Andy Robertson, and he also resolved that Trent Alexander-Arnold was just going to play right back. There was endless conversation the season before about Trent Alexander-Arnold moving into midfield, and Arne Slot turned up and just straightened all of that out. Liverpool last season, when they were played 28, had 67 points on the board. This season, Arsenal only had 60 at that point. Liverpool, what they did last season, Slot had them unbeaten from September until April in the league. And that's how he won the league. He had this sense of mission, and he was really clear he'd come to win. And he'd come to win with the side that he inherited. He only made one sign, and it was Federico Chiesa. What then happens, I think, over the course of the summer with Liverpool making the changes off the pitch, and also with the tragedy of what happens to Diogo, which has a huge impact on the football club, both emotionally and practically. Pre-season was ruined. Is that I think Arne Slot lost the ability to be the same football. This is the way we play. And that doesn't have to be attacking, by the way. Rafa Benitez, Gerard Houllier, they were not attacking managers. They were managers that were about defensive solidity and control. It doesn't have to be attacking. But I think Liverpool not having something to fall back on, and Slot himself not having something to fall back on, led to, firstly, the football deteriorating even further. But secondly, a wider sense of belief in him as the man to continue the journey deteriorating as well. Liverpool don't win any of the last 4 games. The underlying numbers in terms of XG difference on Liverpool's games since March through to now is the 6th worst in the country. What you were seeing with the eye was that this was just not good enough. That the crowd was saying that this was just not good enough in the grounds. And I think that it led to people really having massive doubts about not whether or not Arne Slot is a really good football manager, because you're an idiot if you don't think he is, but whether or not he's the sort of football manager that helps you climb back up the mountain all together on the march. And I think that was the bit that Arne Slot just found at the key moment was lacking in his Liverpool tenure.
Yeah, it's interesting, Neil, on our app, 73% of people think that his sacking is the right move, and that not all, obviously, Liverpool fans. And you mentioned that kind of almost identity or style of play or something to cling on to when results aren't going well. I mean, the season actually started pretty well. I think 7 of take the Community Shield out, 7 wins in a row. But then I think there were 6 defeats from 7, and it seemed that they weren't quite sure what they were trying to do on the pitch, and the fans struggled with that by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. You're watching it not be what you think it's going to be. You're not watching it go in the direction of travel that you expect it to go in. And I think that, Liverpool have got to think now about precisely what they want that direction of travel to be. I'll say again, I don't think Liverpool have to play attacking football. I like it when Liverpool play attacking football. Everyone likes it when the club plays attacking football. But if Liverpool wanted to go in a different direction, as long as we all understand what the direction is, and as long as we're all in it together, then that's absolutely fine. But, Liverpool last sort of 2-3 home games, 4 even, Liverpool I think score first in all of them and struggle to go on and win the game. That's a big part of this as well. There's the game against Tottenham. It might not be all concurrent, but Liverpool go ahead against Tottenham, go ahead against Chelsea, go ahead against last day, I can't even remember who we played now off the top of my head, Brentford. And Liverpool just look really poor at 1-0 in all of these matches. And, little things like that, what are we all trying to do here, and what are we all trying to achieve? So, I think that this is why people, people who've been coming and talking to me in pubs and bars have been saying things like, this can't go on. These are not people who are particularly online, as far as I can tell. These are just people sort of coming for a bit of a chat, and their sense is that this just can't go on. And that's sort of been the vibe that I think a lot of people have been feeling whilst they've been watching the matches in the ground and also at home as well. So I think it has become difficult for people to sort of understand. But let's be clear, Neil Mellor just said there about, he mentioned 4 players, they haven't been able to get on the pitch together. There's only been 88 minutes where Ekitike, Isak and Wirtz have all been on the pitch together. And that won't be happening next season. Ekitike is possibly out for the entirety of next season in amongst all of this kerfuffle that's gone on for Liverpool over the course of this campaign and the way the injuries have spiralled and got out of hand. And I think that the people who run Liverpool have really got to reflect themselves on whether or not they did a good enough job last summer. My argument is that they did not. They left a manager who was managing the club through something awful, underprotected. They left him with inadequate numbers of footballers, in particularly 2 areas of the pitch. They were trying to sign Mark Gay up until the closing of the window. They failed to do that. And as part of that, it begs the question, well, other centre-backs did exist. If you thought Liverpool needed another centre-back, and they did, by the way, other centre-backs were possible, but they risked it and took it all the way to the line. They gambled massively on Alexander Isak, and it's worth saying, in a number of ways, a defining factor of last season for both Liverpool and Newcastle is the Alexander Isak transfer, which in the end hugely damaged both clubs over the course of the season, because Isak turns up to Liverpool and he's nowhere near fit, and he spends the entire season never fit, and Liverpool have staked the entirety of the budget on that. The people who run, not the entirety, but a bulk of the budget on that, the people who run Liverpool made those decisions and made those calls. And whilst they themselves, like Arne Slot, might have been a little bit unlucky, that still doesn't mean they were the right decisions and the right calls. And they've got to think through whether or not they've approached this right. Liverpool have got to think through, how many players do you need to be able to challenge for the league and the Champions League at once? And what's Liverpool's strategy to go and achieve that? There's so much for the people who run Liverpool to think about. Their issues and their questions are not solved by this one manager going. There's a remarkably big summer for them. And it's worth saying that Michael Edwards is Fenway Sports Group's head of football, and Richard Hughes is Liverpool's technical director. And both of their contracts expire in 56 weeks. So what's their status at the club at the moment? Are they in this for the long haul? If they are, it would be great to find out that they are, because I would presume these are going to be 2 of the individuals who are integral in deciding what happens next in the dugout at Liverpool, but also what's the makeup of the squad next season. But they very rarely speak in public.
Neil Atkinson from the Anfield Wrap, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot, take it easy.